I'm here today with Dusty Chipura. Did I say that correctly?
Good job.
And to talk about neurodiversity and our theme, growth through adversity. But first, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think you did a great job. My name is Dusty Chipura, and I'm an ADHD coach with Vancouver ADHD Coaching, and I'm from Vancouver, British Columbia.
Great. Well, then we're just going to jump right into it. What do you see in your field of ADHD coaching to be the state of neurodivergent individuals today?
Oh, wow. Well, so primarily a lot of the outreach and sort of communicating that I do is through the Twitter medium, which is how we met. And I'm seeing like a really amazing community of neurodivergent people arising because of social media. So not just Twitter, but even like on TikTok, right? People have like ADHD related hashtags, on Instagram as well. So I'm seeing the rise of a really empowered neurodivergent community who have the terms to talk about ADHD and neurodivergency, I think, in ways previous generations didn't. So a lot of people, understand terms like rejection sensitivity or like stimming or hyperfocus, and they're very comfortable using a lot of these terms. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I love that you touch on that, because what I'm also amazed by is the speed at which people seem to be educated, because if they don't know what RSD means or anything else, then there's always somebody around to explain or to link to some wonderful materials that will explain that very quickly or very visually in very accessible ways to people, even if they can't like read a long article. There are so many sources that we're all sharing with each other to help educate.
Yeah, there's a lot of good ADHD content being put out there right now.
Okay, and can you tell us a little bit about your work as an ADHD coach? What is ADHD to you? What is coaching to you?
Yeah, so I'm a certified coach. I always forget what the certification is. I think it's ACG or AC. I don't know. I have some sort of certification. I'm a certified coach. The acronyms kill me.
They're all going to be on the site where this interview will be published. So
okay, yeah. So just look at whatever acronym I put there. That's what kind of coach I am. And so what I do is I work with clients from all over the world, as well as doing some group coaching to help people sort of like master their ADHD, to meet their goals, and to help them figure out the ways in which ADHD is getting in the way and how they can work around that. So coaching is interesting, right? People sometimes think that as an ADHD coach, I'm going to solve their problems for them, or I'm just going to teach them how to manage their ADHD, which I'm not, right? There's a lot of great resources out there. There's lots of good books. You don't need to hire a coach if you just want to learn to manage your ADHD. But if you're not able to really make use of those resources, if you struggle to follow through with them, if you struggle to remember them, if you struggle to put them into action, then coaching can kind of help you come up with the strategies and the solutions and the tools to do the things that you're trying to do, even if that's use these strategies to manage your ADHD. So my role as a coach is a lot more about helping the client decide what's important to them and how to get there. Decide what's important and how to get there, right? I'm not like the expert above them. I'm not telling them what to do. I'm not advising them. I'm not, I do sometimes have useful information about ADHD to share with them if they don't know, but for the most part, we're in a partnership, right? The client is my partner. They are telling me what's important to them, and I'm helping to support them in getting where they're going and helping them to learn what they need to know to succeed in the future.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great explanation, I think, because I think a lot of people probably do self-coaching, but at some point self-coaching can only get you so far, because there's always stuff that you don't necessarily see, or you only start to notice if somebody points you towards it maybe, or focuses you on it.
Exactly. I think it's interesting as a coach, because a big part of coaching is like not trying to fix people's problems, which is hard to do. and just listening, right? And sometimes just by providing like a slow space for people with ADHD to process and slow their brains down and talk, you know, a lot of us are verbal processors. We got to talk about our thoughts to kind of think them. So by just creating a space in which we can deeply discuss an issue, a lot of the times people figure stuff out on their own. And it's funny because sometimes as a coach, you think like, did I really do anything? But I think there's a really important process of holding space for the client, reflecting things back to them, helping them stay on track, right? So if what you want is to change careers, and then we end up spending a lot of our sessions, you know, talking about how you're going to organize your living room, then my job is to help gently guide you back to like, hey, is this moving you forward in that big goal that you have of changing careers, right? Can we stick to the main agenda, right? Mm-hmm. As well as just helping the client to try things, right? So I think coaching is also like a practice of experimentation and creativity and curiosity. So instead of coming in and say, well, if you do A, you'll get B, which I never say because I don't know, I'm encouraging clients to just say, if you try A, what do you think might happen? I wonder, let's try it, right? So helping ADHDers kind of step away from that, like that really black and white kind of thinking and help them like play a bit more with curiosity, I think also helps them generate solutions.
Yeah, lovely. So is there any sort of particular problems or fields that you're interested in terms of ADHD coaching?
Yeah, so I don't know, maybe it's just because I'm on Twitter, but a lot of the clients that I coach work in tech. So I get a lot of tech-based clients, and I don't know if that's because of they find me on Twitter, tech people are on Twitter, or because a lot of tech people have ADHD. I don't know. So lots of like self-management in terms of work, managing projects and deadlines. Creatively, I work also with a lot of writers and creative folks, right? So it's really stressful when you can't manage your ADHD and that gets in the way of your creative production, and you can end up, you know, feeling very much a lot of, you know, the imposter syndrome because maybe you're not able to stay organized enough to put your work out there or finish your work or even get down to business of doing the creative work. So supporting creative people in their creative process is important to me. And then another thing that I'm doing is really focusing on women or rather people who are pregnant and supporting them through the process of pregnancy and childbirth and early parenthood. So there's a lot of literature out there about medication in pregnancy, right? Like there's been lots of research done around medication when you're pregnant or breastfeeding. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of research and information out there about how to parent a child with ADHD, but there's not, when I was pregnant, I couldn't find anything. I couldn't find a single thing that talked about what the experience of being pregnant with ADHD was like and what that might be like if you're not medicated, if you've chosen to stop medication, if for whatever reason your doctor won't prescribe you medication, you know, if medication is not a good choice for you, just absolutely nothing. No tips on how to manage ADHD, no tips on what to expect. So I've found it very rewarding to work with women and people through their pregnancy, and to start creating content around what people can expect out of pregnancy with ADHD and also early parenthood. So parenting a baby, parenting a toddler, right? There's a lot of executive function things that go into that. And that's a real area of interest for me.
That sounds really interesting. And there are so many things that you could say about that. In one sense, I'm really wondering what if you found any sort of common themes, because in a sense, if you've met one person with ADHD, then you've met one person with ADHD. So it's probably different for all of us. But in another sense, there might be things that can come up more often because of the specific ways our brain is wired. So I can think of a few things with smaller kids. Like, for instance, for me, it was really hard to come to terms with how boring some of the ways of dealing with small children could be for me, and how I felt really guilty for not being able to stay focused on it. But I'm wondering if you see any common themes in pregnancy already.
Yeah, so I mean, we know that pregnancy can really affect you hormonally in terms of like your emotional state, and so can ADHD. So you put those two things together and you can, you know, go through some pretty intense rejection sensitivity, some pretty intense emotional dysregulation. So emotional management is a big one, right? Getting ready for baby. So all the organizational steps involved in like, you know, being ready for your child, whether that's getting items that you need, coordinating your healthcare and your birth plan, you know, as well as taking care of yourself, right? It's when you're pregnant, there are foods you can't eat. There are things you can't do. There are things you have to do every day, like take a prenatal, right? So managing your health while you're pregnant is a big theme. And also expectations, right? So managing some of the fears, some of the, you know, some of the expectations, because, you know, when your baby is born, like pregnancy and early parenting can be really different than what you think it's going to be. So helping pregnant people be flexible and adapt to changing circumstances as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I think I was really lucky because I did like a ton of babysitting. So I had pretty clear ideas of what to expect. Except for that,
but even with
never
with parenting, right? They don't tell you. Sorry.
That's. I was just going to say it's never the same when you could just hand the baby back to their parents after a while and go, not my problem anymore. But yeah, go ahead.
Like even with early parenting, and I'm sure that like there might be slightly different protocols, you know, in different geographical places. But when my baby was born, I didn't really know that I would need to. Like they only told me in the hospital, you're going to have to, you know, track the number of time your baby pees and poops and like feeds and naps. And what they do here in BC is the first few days that you're home with baby, a public health nurse will call you. So I remember when the health nurse called me, she said, how many times has your baby gone pee? And I said, I don't know. How many times has your baby gone poo? I don't know. And that's like really important information because that could signal to you if the baby's not feeding well, if there's something wrong. And so the public health nurse was quite concerned. And I was like, no, I'm sure it's fine. I know she's been, you know, going, but I don't, what did I eat for dinner yesterday? I couldn't tell you. Where did I put my keys? You know, how many times did my baby poop yesterday? Jesus, I don't know, 5, 10. She pooped a lot, right? Not knowing, like, even having a strategy to keep track of that. You know, I remember how I felt when the nurse was like, what do you mean you don't remember? Like, what do you mean? Well, was it a lot? Was it a little? And I was like, honestly, I don't know. You
almost have to go back to the diapers and count.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. I mean, that's one strategy if you want to be digging through a dirty garbage can full of smelly diapers.
Yeah, and a lot of people in the Netherlands have separate garbage cans for diapers. So that makes it a little easier.
Still not pleasant, but easier.
Yeah.
But yeah, so just, you know, preparing for all the challenges of caring for a newborn, as well as managing yourself through that, right? Because you're going to be underslept. You're going to be, it's going to be really easy to neglect your self-care. You might find it really boring, right? You might be really emotional because of all the residual hormones. You might have postpartum depression. And so how does that interact with your ADHD, right? So I'm certainly not a medical expert. I don't have a medical background. I am moving towards taking some doula training so that I can be of better usefulness to pregnant women with ADHD as they navigate their pregnancy. But just in terms of like helping them stay on top of that stuff and maybe notice, right? Notice if something's going wrong. That's an area that I'm really interested in right now.
Yeah, great. That sounds really interesting. And doula training sounds like a whole other area of interest. Yeah, I can imagine even the emotional regulation during giving birth is a big thing, and that would be really worthwhile to have somebody present who not only can support you through that, but also knows about how ADHD could play into that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to bring us back around to our theme, which is growth through adversity. In what ways do you think neurodivergent people are challenged in tackling adversity? How is that different from any other person?
When you say adversity, how do you mean?
Well, adversity, the way I understand the word, but I'm not a native English speaker, so that may be different than your understanding of it, is is something that can come on your path as sort of an obstacle, or so a hard thing to move through, or a big life change?
Okay. So any adversity. We're just talking about I think what you're asking is where are neurodivergent people challenged in handling challenges? Is that kind of what you're asking?
Yeah. You see,
okay.
What do you see in your practice in terms of that? What are common?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, like a lot, I think, right? We have people with ADHD tend to have low frustration tolerance. We give up really easily. A lot of us tend to have really, really poor self-talk and really poor self-esteem. So, you know, we're already beating ourselves up for every little thing, let alone like getting through, you know, a big life change or a challenge. You know, depending on what kind of adversity it is, organizational or time-based challenges might exacerbate it, right? You know, if you're having a difficult time at your job and maybe you're having some kind of a job review, that would be the most important time for you to like be on time, be really well organized. But if you know, if you're a really, really messy and disorganized person, that might end up causing you to lose the job maybe, right? Again, emotional regulation could be a huge issue with adversity and life challenges. Black and white thinking as well, right? So when we get it, we tend to get really attached to specific outcomes, only sort of see things in a very all or nothing way. And so that can make it hard, I think, to navigate adversity.
And in terms of like big life changes, are there specific themes that you see people struggling with more than others, or?
Yeah, well, I mean, we know that, and don't quote me on the statistic, but we know that people with ADHD tend to struggle more in their relationships, right? In their marriages. I think it's like a 5 times higher divorce rate or something. I could be wrong about that specific number, but people with ADHD are at a higher risk of divorce, right? So navigating relationship challenges, particularly, so adversity in our relationships with others. And in my experience, I see a lot of ADHDers who struggle with social skills, loneliness, friends, or conflict in relationships, right? I think, sorry, are you asking for more specificity around like what kinds of challenges I see people going through?
Yeah, I think so. That especially the ones that they seek help with, I think that they can't seem to navigate by themselves.
Yeah, and so career as well, right? Career is another area where we don't have a real good time horizon. We can only see, you know, we can't see very far into the future. And so that causes some planning and goal challenges for people with ADHD around like choosing their career and pursuing it actively. Mm-hmm. And so what that can lead to is like job hopping, or, you know, maybe not being in your chosen profession. And then if you struggle with authority, right, if you struggle to do things the way that you're told to do them, you might have a lot of job loss, right? So that's another thing we see is people struggling to keep jobs, changing jobs because of boredom. So adversity in career and jobs is one for sure.
So then also,
and then, so yeah, I don't know. I mean, adversity could strike anywhere in any way, I guess, you know?
Yeah. So then also, if challenges happen like with Corona or COVID right now, that also impacts the business situations where businesses really start to struggle, and also sort of maybe clamp down a little bit on people that they employ in terms of like, this is really, it's how do you say? It's now or never now. People might also start to struggle then, because sort of the room to breathe that they've had before seems to vanish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, coronavirus is its whole own adversity, right? People suddenly have to work from home while managing their children. Suddenly they're responsible for their children's education. Even I coach, you know, a few teachers, and that's been a huge challenge, right? It's very, I think people who are teachers with ADHD have a lot of their own struggle, because there's more work than could ever be done, even if you're a neurotypical person, let alone a person with ADHD. Definitely. And now these people are suddenly in the position of having to like engage and teach their kids through video chats and like come up with whole new lesson plans, right? While still maintaining attendance and emails from parents and this kind of thing. You know, and just being stuck at home all the time might be really, really hard for a person who's like very hyperactive. So there's a lot of ways I think that coronavirus in particular has been a big challenge for some ADHDers. Not for all, but for some.
Yeah, so that brings me to my next question, which I'm also really curious about, and I'm sure there are many answers to that as well. In what ways do you think neurotypical people might be more able to tackle adversity than neurodivergent people might be more able to tackle diversity than neurotypical people?
Yeah, so in what ways are neurodivergent people better able to tackle adversity than neurotypical people, right?
Because to bring
yeah, I mean,
example of COVID, I've seen a lot of teachers like really take the lead right now, that more creative.
Yeah, so this is the thing, right? The thing about adversity is it's stimulating, right? It's exciting. It might be stressful, but stress is still a strong flavor. It's a strong stimulation. And when people with ADHD are adequately stimulated, and we tend to need really, really high levels of stimulation, everything clicks for us, right? We can access most of our abilities. We can access our intelligence because, you know, so many ADHDers are exceedingly intelligent, right? We see a lot of like gifted, you know, twice gifted, twice exceptional people and gifted children who have ADHD. And, you know, for those people when they grow up, a lot of the times because of their ADHD, they feel like they're not meeting their potential, right? They know they're really, really smart or really, really creative, but the organizational aspect gets in the way. But in a crisis, like, we're great, right? We're the ones jumping right in there and saving the day. We're the ones coming up with the outside the box solutions, taking charge. Like, so adversity can really be, I think, where a person with ADHD actually flourishes. Crisis management, because crises are interesting. Crises are stimulating. So in that way, I think ADHDers are kind of adept when it comes to adversity. And yeah, because we tend to be quite outside the box thinkers, and we have to sort of do things in our own way. A crisis might be an opportunity for us to like get really creative. So yeah.
Yeah, nice. Can you think of any reasons why that is? I know for me that a crisis sort of gives immediate priorities. So that sort of always helps me sort out. I always have a million ideas for what to do. But then if there's a crisis, it's immediately very clear which ones of those is the most important to get started on.
Yeah, as you say, I think it's the stimulation, and I think it's the urgency, right? When we have deadlines, when there's urgency helps us focus. Urgency helps us get things done. So we're really good at doing things when there's urgency, like a deadline or we're under fire. So we can jump into action, and then just all the stimulation, all the drama. Like, my brain is a total drama queen. My brain thrives on drama, and that can be really maladaptive, right? During calm periods, during boring periods, I've really had to recognize that my brain will sometimes seek out drama, even if that's just like, you know, fighting like a Facebook argument, right? So when there's a lot of drama just around us, it kind of helps us to like focus in. It kind of gets our attention so that we're not like kind of having our attention go in all different directions like it normally does. We can kind of, focus.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So do you think there's a way to leverage that way that our brain turns on if there's a crisis or if there's an adversity?
Do you mean like outside of the crisis?
Focusing on an argument does not seem a productive way to leverage that sort of.
Yeah, exactly, right? So I think it's about, first of all, recognizing and admitting that, right? And then, yeah, maybe figuring out strategies for how you start to wield that like a tool. How do you bring crisis or urgency or drama in like a measured way that helps you get to work? How do you turn it on and off, right? How do you give yourself permission to jump in and out of that instead of having it creep up on you, right? So instead of having, you know, a paper that's due tomorrow and the deadline creeps up on you and, oh my God, it's like the night before and now I have to write this whole paper. How do you build in like a false sense of urgency? You know, how do you work with your teacher or your support network to like set some other deadlines that give you that sort of like, false urgency so that your brain can do that thing where it jumps into focus mode, right? Stuff like that.
So any tips for that you can share with people? Like,
Oh, it's hard because adversity can be anything. It's such a broad term, right?
Well, try to make it concrete in some way.
Yeah. Let me think about it here for a second. So I think like finding positive outlets for your need for like drama and excitement, right? If you are someone who gets more things done when you're motivated by crisis or drama, you might choose a career, right? As like a paramedic, for example, or somebody whose job it is to put out fires in some sense, right? You might find an actual career that just leads you from fire to fire so that you stay interested, so that you can do your best work, right? I think recognizing what parts of your job or your life are too boring for you or that you're not good at, where there's too low stimulation, and delegating those or outsourcing them is really important, right? So if I'm not good at admin work, which I'm not, because you've sent me emails and you've seen how I respond to emails, can you get an admin assistant? Can you outsource it, right? So that you can focus on the parts of your career or your job that naturally engage your ADHD brain. That's one tip. And then again, like false urgency, false deadlines, right? Is there a way to set up a deadline before the actual deadline so that you're actually ready and you're not cramming the night before? Whether that's saying that you're going to have a coffee date with a friend where they're going to proofread your paper, for example, right? If I have a paper due on June 30th, I'm going to set up a date with my friend on June 25th, where I know they're going to be expecting me to bring my full paper and they're going to read it. So then I have a reason to get that paper done, not the night before. And if I need to make any changes, if I need to make any edits, now I have time, right? But knowing that I need that false deadline. Even just with regards to being on time somewhere, right? A common tip that I hear is people, set their alarm earlier, set an appointment earlier. But if you always set it the same amount earlier, like 30 minutes earlier, your brain's going to figure it out and it's going to discount. So what do? We vary it, right? Whenever I have any kind of an appointment, I never put it in my calendar for the time that it's at. I'll put it in for anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour early, but I do it differently every time, so I never know. So I have to trust the calendar time and actually be there at that time. So false deadline, right? In terms of like leveraging our abilities in adversity too, like I think the better you manage your ADHD on a day-to-day basis, the more you move all that junk out of the way so that your creativity can flow, right? Like, again, we're outside the box thinkers. We're really creative people, but we don't give ourselves any time, right? Sometimes that's because we're so behind in life with all the stuff we have to manage, and coaching can help with that. And sometimes it's because like we overload ourselves, right? We overwhelm our schedules. We put too much on our plate. And we don't leave our brain any creative time, right? So being cognizant of the fact that we need slow time, we need downtime, even though it feels like it's going to be painful, like, oh my God, I have nothing to do this afternoon, I'm going to die of boredom. Give yourself that time, because that is when your creative ideas are going to come. If your brain is otherwise engaged every second of every day, it doesn't have any opportunities to be creative for you, right?
Yeah, that's funny. I see that a lot around me. People always busy, like cramming their brain full of stimulation and never leaving themselves any time to let it simmer and let their own ideas out of that.
Yeah. That's why people get their best ideas in the shower and when they're driving, right? Because it's the only time that like they're kind of occupied, but their brain is otherwise not occupied.
Yeah, but I think nowadays with podcasts and everything, even in the car, people are still like feeding.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Sometimes I get clients to go on walks, and I ask them if they'd be willing to try going on a walk without anything, without a podcast. I find that people are often trying to use every single second productively,
Yeah, it's funny how.
And I think productivity and creativity need different space.
I think that's very true. Yeah. So do you think there's also a way in which people who are neurodiverse, the neurodiversity in itself may be an adversity, considering the world is still not very neurodivergent friendly? Do you think that makes it...
Sorry, can you ask me that question again?
So I was wondering if you would consider the ADHD in itself to be its own sort of adversity, considering the world at large is maybe not that friendly towards neurodiverse people?
Oof, that's a hard one. I'm reluctant to answer that question because there is a small but very militant subsect of disability advocates who would probably jump down my throat if I said yes. I think it just depends on.
I hear people struggling with a lot. Like, is my
yeah.
superpower, or is it also like, does it have? Can I say that it has downsides, or can I only say?
Yeah, well, I think you've hit the nail on the head, right? The problem is that we do live in a neurotypical world. So in a neurotypical world, yeah, neurodivergency is going to be a handicap, right? Because we have to do things in this one method. And I think it depends on the person and really the life that they've set up for themselves. But, you know, a lot of people come to coaching because they're struggling, right? People come to coaching because their ADHD challenges them and it prevents them from doing things that they want or need to do. So yeah, I guess yes.
So do you think that might also make some neurodivergent people a little more accepting of other people, even neurotypical people who come up against adversity in their lives, because they know what it's like to sort of interact with the world and find that it doesn't work the way that you think it should, or something has suddenly changed?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people with ADHD, I hear a lot of people talking about themselves as being very empathic, right? So we have big hearts. A lot of us just wear our heart on our sleeve, right? It kind of goes along with that impulsivity and reactivity. We don't, and we don't always look to the past to learn lessons about the future. So some of us tend to be very kind of innocent and naive and open-hearted and very loving, and this can get us into trouble sometimes. But I find that people with ADHD are just, yeah, they're often just really very loving, and so I think that helps them to be really accepting of others. Sometimes we can also be huge jerks, right? Because we don't always censor ourselves. So it's a little column A, a little column B. Sometimes we're strong flavors. I don't know if that's exactly what you're asking, but that's my answer.
No, that's fine. You don't have to give me the answers that I'm looking for. And I'm just exploring, like, I'm really interested to hear what you think. That's why I'm interviewing you and not the other way around. So, okay. So if you look ahead at the year that's ahead, or the maybe the next 3 years, what are some big opportunities you see coming towards us in terms of being neurodiverse? What might change? What is on the verge of becoming possible?
Well, so I think that first of all, the fact that so much work has gone digital and there's so much work in the tech industry, I think in some ways that really bodes well for people with ADHD. Again, because project-based work can be really good for us, right? Diving in and diving out of different projects. And as I say, I see a lot of people with ADHD working in the tech industry. So I think that's, you know, we're only moving more towards a digital online world. So there's going to need to be more tech folks, and that seems to be a really good fit for a lot of people with ADHD. Sorry, can you ask your question again?
So is there anything, if you look ahead at the next year or the next 3 years, that you see coming towards us in terms of opportunities?
Opportunities, right. I think that what I see in terms of like this sort of disability activism movement and the like neurodiversity or neurodivergent awareness movement on social media is going to be really helpful, because you know, we see people more on the Facebook groups and stuff, on the Facebook support groups, who are in their 50s and 60s saying, oh, I only just got diagnosed, and if I had known, and like I didn't know how to manage any of this stuff. And it's really sad, right? It's sad to hear somebody later in life feel that they could have done better had they had the tools, had just even the language, had they known, right? So the fact that there's so much information out there and that people are sharing ideas and strategies in a very grassroots way, like there's this grassroots digital empowerment movement, and that's really important, because the earlier that you have those tools, the better your prognosis is going to be, right? You can ask for the accommodations you need, you can get the help you need so that you can succeed in life. So, you know, as a coach, my interest is in helping people with ADHD succeed as much as they can. And I think that there's like sort of this like digital neurodivergency revolution that's going on that's going to help a lot more people in the future with that.
So is there any one thing that you would like to give a big push in terms of exposure when it comes to like information people might otherwise miss? Like, know more about ADHD and food, or ADHD and emotional regulation, or is there any?
Yeah, I think just like sometimes the problem isn't that the resources don't exist, but we can forget anything, right? So we can forget to look. We can forget that the resources exist, even though they do, right? So, and that's true of me as well. So I think the biggest tip, or like the biggest thing that I want to say to people is just to there are a lot of amazing ADHD like influencers and content creators out there right now, and they're putting out tons of great information and resources, and it's all right there. All you have to do is remember to go look, right?
Great. That sounds like a great tip, but also something that you
remember.
Need some sort of structure for, like, I don't know, put in your calendar, look up one ADHD source, something.
Yeah, exactly. It sounds funny, but schedule it in, make a note. Don't assume you're going to remember. There's so many things that I wanted to learn or research or get more information on, and it was like just a passing fancy in my brain, and then it was gone. And there's so many things I wish I had spent the time to learn about even years ago, but I didn't write it down, you know, so I never went back to it.
Yeah. So before we sort of go into the last part of the interview, I'm really interested to hear if there are any other areas of neurodivergency that you're interested in learning more about. Like, we've talked a lot about ADHD, but that's just one part of like a bigger picture.
Yeah. So, I mean, I tend to stay out of, I don't speak about like autism, for example, as any kind of an expert, because I'm not, but we know that there's about like a 50% overlap, right? Like a lot of people have both autism and ADHD. And so some of my clients have both. And there's a lot of really amazing autistic people with autism who are influencers and content creators who are also like, you know, starting to speak more about their experience of what it is to like have autism and live with it. And, you know, that's not an experience that I have or that I can relate to. But it's really, really interesting, right? It's really interesting to see where a person with autism is, you know, better equipped to handle a certain kind of challenge, or like, you know, in what kind of scenarios they thrive and that sort of thing.
Nice. Do you have any clients that identify with that
have autism?
Yeah.
I have. So I have a handful of clients that are both ADHD and have autism.
So if people are looking for a coach, you can also work with them. That's good to know, I think.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not an expert in any case around autism, but I think coaching can help everybody, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. All right. Well, it was lovely talking to you. And I think I should also offer you an opportunity to sort of promote yourself. So if people want to work with you, want to read more about you, where can they find you?
Twitter is where I'm most active. So it's like at Dusty Chipura. That's DUSTY. C as in Charlie, HIP as in Peter, URA, at Dusty Chipura on Twitter. Also YouTube, right? I've been very on and off about video content that I've created because, you know, ADHD, but I do have a new set of videos that I'm doing around early parenthood with ADHD that I'll be putting out really soon, hopefully this week or next week. So I'd love it if people went to YouTube and just search for me. I think I put my name as like Dusty the ADHD Coach. I'm really terrible if you just ask me these things, but I'm sure there'll be links. And then my website is just www.vancouveradhdcoaching.com. So it's pretty easy to find me there.
Yeah, your website will certainly be on the platform that this is going to be published on. If you want me to add your Twitter handle or anything, just send me an email and I'll make sure those links are also added to your interview.
Cool. I have a Facebook page too, but I always forget about it.
And any special programs that you're starting soon, or are you just focusing on?
Yeah, so that's the other thing I do is I do offer different courses and classes that I do through Zoom. Like over the winter, I did one around nutrition management and ADHD. Right now I have a couple different coaching groups happening, so small groups of coaching, and I'm probably going to be starting up with some of the online sort of ADHD basics or ADHD management classes that I run. So just keep an eye on Twitter and the website and you'll see them.
Perfect. Thank you so much for the interview.
You're so welcome. Bye.